Live. Good evening. We are live. It is Thursday, 9 p.m. That can only mean one thing. You are on the road south. Before I introduce our very special guest, I'll get one of these right one day. I promise. I promise, Ed. I'll get one of them right. Before I introduce our very special guest, a few points of order. Thank you for joining us, Southbound, here tonight. We have reached across the world, Ed. We have a Nigerian listener, and we have American listeners, and we have German listeners. Whether they're still Nathan on a VPN, I don't know. Stay tuned to find out later. So Nathan will be joining us later, I promise. But joining us now is a college expert fan, a big Oregon Ducks fan, and is a very talented writer. He says it's a hobby, but I've read some of his stuff. He's good. He's going to explain to us why in 2026 the Colts are drafting Arch Manning, and that's Adam. Welcome.
Good evening, gents. How you doing?
Good. We're good. We're good. No, it's a nice Thursday night here in the UK. The weather, the sunshine did decide to come out. Summer is still going, thankfully. So why don't you, because I asked you, is it fair to call you a college football expert? You very modestly said no. I said, maybe on this side of the pond you are. So why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
As I'm sure everyone can tell from the accent, I'm British. So accepting a compliment and modesty is what I'm mainly about. So thank you for that intro. So my name's Adam. My website is collegefootballukview.com. On X, you'll find me at CFB UK View. And I've been writing about college football most of this year, really, since the end of last year. I've been a fan of the sport, I think, since 2009 now, so watching it. I mainly look at college football, but I don't neglect the professional game as well. So I enjoy the NFL in my spare time when I'm supporting the Ducks. I'm a New York Giants fan as well, for all my sins. But, enjoy all forms of the sport, but just chose to write about the college game just because some of the passion, the fans that come with it. Maybe I just like marching bands, I don't know. But I just really found my niche writing about that side of the sport, I think. So I've been enjoying doing that this year. But just really looking forward to actually talking about some football. I think my first blog post was the national final. So the last game of the season, of course. So I've been writing a lot of off-field stuff, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of that later. But really looking forward to today. Can I actually talk about some football and some players?
Yeah, great, nice. Ed, this was your idea to get a college football expert on.
Yes.
So I'm going to let you take the reins with the first question, and I'll jump in after.
Yeah, I thought it'd be really interesting. And Adam, thanks again for joining us. Really appreciate it. I know we've chatted a few times on X just about the college game. But I thought it'd be interesting primarily because I know we've literally just had the draft, but it's never too early to start thinking about next year or the years ahead, because obviously teams do need to start preparing and thinking about, although nobody knows where they're going to be drafting, it's still interesting to look at what players are going to be about. And obviously for the Indianapolis Colts, I thought it'd be interesting to maybe have a little look ahead at some potential players in some position groups that I think, and these are just my opinions, that the Colts may be interested in next year. I'm going to include quarterbacks in that because I think it'd be remiss not to. But I thought it'd be interesting just to kind of get a jump start, some players that you think are players to keep an eye on for 2026, teams maybe to keep an eye on for 2026, and then maybe just some sort of general questions about this year's draft and some of the players, because quite interested. I might even start with that if you don't mind. We were chatting off air before we came on about the college season being shorter. It's only a 12-game season. First thing that came into my head there, and it is relevant to us here at the AFC Southbound, divisional rivals, the Jacksonville Jaguars, obviously traded up to take a certain Mr. Travis Hunter, which I have to say I wasn't particularly enamoured with. I was very much campaign keep Hunter out of the AFC South. But there's been a lot of talk about him potentially playing both ways in the NFL. So I suppose before we go any further, just interested in your thoughts in that, really. How feasible do you think that is to go from a 12-game season? Because we've spoken about it quite a lot here, about the feasibility of it. What are your kind of thoughts on that? That taking the leap, first of all, from college to the NFL level is big, considerable enough. then trying to sort of learn an offensive playbook and potentially take snaps on defense. Yeah, just kind of what are your thoughts on that?
Right. So, well, firstly, it's a 12-game regular season, but if you add some bowl games and maybe a bit of a playoff run, it can be extended. But you're right, it's a 12-game just regular season. Yeah, I mean, Travis Hunter's an interesting one because he is that real generational talent. However, being a generational talent in college football, like you say, the step up to the NFL, the speed, the pace, the physicality, that is something different. And then you've got to learn a pro style, offense and defense, really both sides of the book. I'm really interested as well to see how that really plays out and how that really goes. We haven't had a lot of feedback, really, have we? Haven't really seen what's going on inside the Jags facility to know how that's really going at the moment. But you're right. I think that does feel like a lot of workload to do on day one to get both sides of those right. If anyone could do it, I mean, he is one of those players that potentially could. He's done it throughout his whole career. He had a coach in Colorado, obviously, Coach Prime. They've been with him quite a long time and knew the player, knew how to get that out of him. How he starts interacting with those new coaches in the Jag setup will be really interesting to see if he can make that work. Because I think he had a really good environment and a really good thing going in Colorado. So yeah, let's see how it goes. But it does feel a very tall task to make that work well in the NFL, the highest level.
Just before we move on to our next question, Nathan has joined us. I think he was just getting all his quarterback notes ready because he's been really desperate to talk quarterbacks tonight. So, Nathan, welcome. Adam's here.
Hey, Nathan.
Hey, guys. Good evening.
He's telling us how we're going to end up with Archman, and I keep saying it because I believe. Say
it enough, it'll come true.
Yeah. I'll let you take back over with your next point.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, so I was just going to say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how worried should I be really about Travis Hunter? So I think it's
pretty worried.
It's that great unknown, isn't it? Like I say, it's a lot of work to take on. But yeah, I'm interested, but also I am slightly worried because I do think he's a generational talent, and I was, like I say, team keep Travis Hunter out of the AFC South. So wasn't particularly pleased to see him come in. Yeah, sorry, that was just the first thing that came into mind. I suppose before we move on to talk about sort of positional groups and sort of prospects to keep an eye on for 2026, Nate, is there anything you kind of wanted to? We'll just talk about Travis Hunter before you came on.
Segues me in perfectly because I drafted him 102 in a dynasty league, so I kind of want him to turn into what the papers say he is really. I think Travis has landed with a pretty good head coach in Liam Cohen. I mean, a pretty good play caller. We don't know what he's going to be like as a head coach. And I think, as Ed says, I remember draft night so well when, our group chat kind of lit up as, oh no, we've got to play this guy twice a year. So yeah, I was in the waiting room and I heard a lot of what you said about Travis. So I definitely won't make you repeat that. But yeah, just to kind of echo Harrison's point, it's like as if he could see my phone because I've been very excited to chat college ball with you, mate. So cheers for coming on.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
So next, what I'd like to talk on, because I think we'll start heavy and we'll end a little bit lighter. We've had a really shining example of how not to run a franchise from the Cincinnati Bengals and how not to treat your first overall pick. Is there a chance? I've seen talks of this on social media, so take it with a pinch of salt. I don't know the rules, but could Shamar Stewart go back to college, or is he not allowed, or what's happening? Do you think he's going to sign? I mean, what's your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one. I can't, off the top of my head, think of someone that has gone back. I guess if you haven't signed, you can, and you still got eligibility. I think the key thing to remember with college football is you have a window of eligibility. So if you're at school for, let's call it 5 years, you can play ball in for those years. That's where you get the concept of redshirting, where someone's injured, they don't want to burn through a year of eligibility, so they redshirt and then step away. I can't remember off the top of my head how many years he played and whether he'll have a little window of eligibility. You can go to the NCAA and appeal in certain circumstances. We've seen circumstances of that. Whether they'll have appetite for that, given everything else, I don't know. But I think it would be pretty unorthodox for him to come back. Yeah, the thing with college football is obviously the college bit. It's still about you're at school, you're at university. So again, I don't know his situation. I don't know if he did graduate anyway in something, and whether that window is still open for him. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see.
Ed, Nathan.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah,
go on.
Go on, you Ed. I was still
going to say just kind of building on that, I suppose, because and I know, Harrison, you want to talk about this with the NIL money coming into the college game. We're seeing players, it's changing the landscape of college football. And Adam, you were telling us obviously how you followed the sport for a long period of time. How have you noticed that sort of affect the game in the last few years, like with the transfer portal, more players moving? I couldn't remember his name, so I'm going to admit I have just Googled it because I couldn't remember the name off the top of my head. But I remember specifically the University of Las Vegas quarterback last year, saying that promises were broken for what he was promised in terms of NIL money, and he just decided to sit out a year. Then obviously there was the name Nico
Lamalabia. I know you're going to make me do that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm awful with names. So he was at Tennessee, wasn't he? And he got into, there was a bit of a standoff there. So just interested there about how you've seen that dynamic change over the last sort of decade. And I suppose building on from what Harrison was saying, we're now seeing a first round pick in the NFL sort of sitting out, which is almost, well, it's not unheard of, but it's very, very unorthodox, and wondering sort of what that impact has been.
Yeah, I know you guys like to go for an hour. I could probably do an hour just on this, so I'll restrain myself. And I've written extensively about this on the blog as well, and I've posted a load of stuff on X. Where to start? Short answer is yes, this has impacted the game massively. And the very short history is the NCAA, the governing body on college football, have always held on to amateurism. These are students and they are doing this for a bit of fun. They are amateurs. That's fine to a point until the sport starts making millions and millions and millions, which it obviously has. And then that becomes a little bit unbalanced. So there's obviously a swell of pressure in the game to start letting players earn something one way or the other. We had lawsuits, and where we've eventually ended up with this concept of NIL in 2001, name, image, and likeness. So the idea is that a player is still not getting played, it's not pay for play, but they're getting paid for their name, image, and likeness. So marketing. So you have Arch Manning, very big, high-profile name. So maybe a Texas, I don't know, car wash, bad example, wants to give him some money to promote the car wash or something like that, right? So local business, obviously he's getting much more better endorsements than that, but just an example. He's benefiting from his name, image, and likeness. So that's the basic idea. That's how it started. Now, that was an interim position because we had a load of lawsuits going through. I won't bore you with the details. That's all on the blog. But essentially, where you have something a little bit woolly, it starts getting abused a little bit. And what you had was the boosters coming together and creating NIL collectives, which was pooling funds to present to players to be able to allow them to benefit off their NIL. But that then starts creeping into, look at all this big pot of money we've got here. Maybe if you come to our school, our university, you might benefit from this big pot of money. So it starts creeping a little bit into a grey area where, are we really benefiting from my marketing, or is this really pay for play now? And this has become quite a big problem since 2001 as NIL's gone along. To the point, as you raised, Ed, we got Nico Lamalabia, who signed a big deal with Tennessee. I think he was on 2-3 million. And that number, we'll come back to that numbers of that size in a second. and then decides he wants to renegotiate with the collective. Because bearing in mind, he's not negotiating with the school, because the school aren't paying anyone at this point. It's the collective, or it's the NIL organization, where in whatever shape or form. So he's got a disagreement with the collective, and all of a sudden he misses practice, or he sits out practice because he's got the ump. Now, big fallout, they part ways, and he eventually, via the portal, finds himself at UCLA. That's a problem. Yeah, that's a problem for development. That's just not good for anything. We had players hopping around, chasing the bag, so to speak. What we've got this June is the house settlement. Again, I won't bore the details, but one part of that was revenue sharing. And so now we've got the ability for schools to give back an element of revenue. So we're still not paying players. This is not pay for play, but it's the school is making a sum of money from advertising, ticket sales, etc., for these players. The players should share a little bit in that. So there's an element now from this season that will go back to players in terms of revenue share. The NIL element is being regulated a little bit tighter as well. So we've got some new bodies regulating that. And that's caused an almighty bust up. I mean, it's now 17th of July. I think this came in 1st of June, this ruling. And we've got lawsuits flying around all over the place because, you've got this NIL collectives that want to a good thing, and that's being picked apart, maybe for very good reason. So that's still all playing out. I think we're many lawsuits away from that ever being solved. But there is an argument as well as where are we going to end up? Are they still amateurs? I think that's done. They're no longer amateurs. But what are they? Are we talking semi-pro? Are they pro? What are we paying them for? What's this money for? But where the money's coming in, you are now at a stage where some of these top players will earn more this year than they will on a rookie contract in the NFL. And that is a problem. That is a problem, certainly for the NFL. And, you've got two organizations. I mean, the NFL is the biggest sport in the US. College football is a second, but it's not a close second. There's some daylight between the two.
Yeah.
And, they're not the natural bedfellows. They don't really cooperate. They don't play nicely, but they are codependent on each other. So it's going to be really interesting to see, how that works. If the NFL doesn't exist, well, you don't really have college football because these players just play for a bit and then go and do something else. There's no pathway. If college football doesn't exist, where do NFL players get their players from? So it's a codependency, but not a happy, not really a friendly one.
Can I just jump in before the next question? Because, like we say, we are all this side of the pond. Someone watching this might not be a football fan. So just to try and contextualize a little bit more and maybe look at it from the franchises and the university standpoint. Trying to compare over here, I see Miles Lewis-Skelly as an Arsenal fan, a good kid, good surroundings around him, and his professional contract. They got their rookie contracts is something like, I don't know, but the rookie contract is peanuts compared to a full-on first-team player, right? And then they sort it out with the club, and they get a proper contract, but it let's say it jumps from maybe 10 grand a month at academy level to 50 grand a month. It's that big of a jump, right? Is there a point, or could you ever see the NFL and the NCAA come into a point where they're gonna have to say you're gonna have to get rid of rookie contracts, and it's gonna have to be structured differently because, like you say, you've got 17-year-olds. If you're a Manning, if you're a future Brady and you're coming through and you're already making 15, 20 million, I'm not going to go and play for $200,000. I know the first round picks are on 18, 19 million a year or something guaranteed. But if you're like a fifth round player, but you're a Riley Leonard would be a great example, right? A 6th round draft pick. He's not going to get a lot on his rookie contract, but in college this year, he probably would have got more. So can you see the model change into a more European soccer-based contract model?
Yeah, anytime I ever talk on X about changing to a European style, I'll get shut down very quickly. It's quite funny in any way, shape, or form. I mentioned Premier League, Champions League, and it goes badly very quickly. But yeah, I think it does need to change, and I think those two sports do need to look at wider models to try and find something that perhaps does work and is a bit more sustainable. Because what we have now probably isn't sustainable, and obviously there's so much flux in college football at the moment, and in a way, the NFL almost has to sit tight and wait to see where it shapes up. Because if you follow one path through that some are looking at, is that you make these players, college football players, professional, you pay them, and then you have collective bargaining agreements, CBAs. So then you can have salary caps. Then it can start looking a bit NFL-ish.
Yeah.
But the issue you've always got with college football is not all of these players are going to be pros. In fact, a small percentage, most of them are going to go and do something else. So it's, if we think about we use the Arsenal example, probably the under 17 academy, the under 16 academy, a lot of them will be looking to go and play football, whether it might not be at the Arsenal level, but maybe it'll be lower down the leagues. But a lot of that pool of players will go and be in the game somewhere. So that it'll all track through. Whereas that's not quite how it works between college and NFL. It gets a bit tricky. So there's so much there they need to figure out. But I do think you're right. There does need to be a new way of looking at it. But that probably can't happen until college football settles.
I suppose just final thing I want to say on that before we probably move on and talk about some prospects and stuff like that. I suppose just picking up on your example there, Harrison, about Miles Lewis-Skelly. Again, nice segue into Arsenal. I think he manages to shoehorn Arsenal into pretty much every podcast we do somewhere along the line. Nice little drop. What I would say is obviously that the level of physicality that American football has versus obviously the football that I played and European football is quite remarkably different. There is still an injury risk every time you step on any sort of sports pitch, but that risk is markedly higher. So I think there is that element of if you can earn it, if it's there to earn it, it's hard to begrudge people earning that money when it's there for them because, you don't know how long you're going to get playing that sport, So there is that element to it as well, I think, that needs to be sort of taken into account. Like I say, it can happen in any football. You could bust your knee open playing our football quite easily, but the risk of injury is quite high in American football. And I don't think anybody begrudges people earning when they can. Absolutely not. Sorry,
no, absolutely not.
Finish on that before we talk about some prospects.
You're absolutely right that the window is small. They earn a lot of money for these universities. They earn a lot of money for the game. So they absolutely should share. It's just got to be maybe a bit more regulated than it is now.
Yeah, that's fair. Cool.
So we're going to move on to a bit of positional talk before we talk about draft sleepers and draft fallers. I'm going to let Nathan kick off the positional talk because he's desperate to talk about kickers. Only joking. He's desperate to talk about potential quarterbacks. As you know, we are 3 Colts fans, so this is a big year for us. We're either running to the Super Bowl with Riley Leonard or we are drafting Archman in next year, but that's as far as you can tell, Adam. I don't know nothing about college football. So I'm going to let Nathan. Yeah, I'm going to let Nathan take charge.
Yeah, I think it's right. It is right for us to give some context of why I've been so excited to talk quarterbacks. Like, as Harrison rightly said, we are fundamentally a Colts podcast. We have one of the most uninspiring, boring quarterback rooms in the league right now, full of hopes, dreams, and likely falls. So I'm not really going to talk Arch Manning, if that's okay. I really don't believe he'll declare this year, especially if Indy is where I think they're going to be. I wouldn't want to go there. So I would stay in Texas for 2 years and get my bag, as you so rightly said earlier. I'm going to start off with, I think, one of my favourite prospects, and that's Lenoris Sellers. Where are you on him?
So in preparation for this, I'd looked at each position and come up with 2 each. And guess who was first on my list for you guys from a Colts perspective? So great minds think alike. I'm a big fan of Lenoir Sellers. So when I think about, in preparation for this, I did a bit of homework on the Colts. So I thought about a run-heavy, RPO-based team. We want our quarterback to run and then look for throws. So intermediate routes, maybe heading out to the outside. We need someone that can do all of that quite big, so he can break a few tackles here and there as well. I think Lenoir really fits that mold really, really well. Big dual threat. I think was it 6'3", 242 pounds. That's a big human being. You know, it was with the throwing, 18 touchdowns last year, 7 while rushing, 600 yards rushing. So that's decent numbers. You know, and that was his first real full year. So he redshirted as a freshman. So he played a couple of games, I think, in 23, big season in 24. And so this year we're really looking for him as a junior, you know, to really kick on from there and keep going with that progression. The interesting thing as well with him, he's been likened to Jalen Hurts in terms of that ability to get going and then to make accurate throws. And I think there's a link, isn't there, with your head coach and the Eagles? You may have coached Hurts while he was OC at the Eagles. So it's quite a nice little link there for him. So maybe the stars are aligning on Lenoir, but yeah, big fan for him. And, you know, he's in the SEC. He's going to get a lot of bright lights, a lot of tough games, though. So it's a difficult conference. So it's really the stage, I think, is there for him to sort of kick on and show himself and be one of those top picks.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Definitely, he's the first name I thought of for the Colts.
So I'm curious to see who the second is. I'm going to try and make a guess at it, right? So first off, shout out Zach Hicks, who we were really lucky to have on the show recently. And Zach kind of threw a complete curveball at us. I don't think any of us were expecting it. And that was Mendoza going into, you know, who's your nation. Is that your second QB?
It's not actually, but I can kind of see he can do a bit of both. I can see where that would come from. Hoosier should have another good year. Big Ten, challenging league, but again, another high-profile one. I fancied Cade Klubnik for you guys. Again, dual threat. You know, the difference maybe between the two, between Lenoir and Cade, is Cade's got a couple more years under his belt of playing. You know, I think he's going into his senior year now. So the decision making, the experience, the leadership. I think he's been team captain for 2 years now. I think it was over 3,000 yards throwing it about last year. 7 touchdowns with rushing as well, about 400 yards. So again, you know, he can do both well, and pretty quick as well. He's not quite as big as Lenoir, I don't think. 6'2", 210, so, you know, slightly smaller frame, which will be interesting to see kind of, you know, how that develops and if that sets him back a little bit. ACC with Clemson. Clemson are going to be there at the top of the ACC again, because they always are. And I think they'll have another good year. So he'll get profile. It's just going to be, can he kick on? Can he stay accurate? I think he's got a reasonably difficult schedule as well. So it'd be interesting to see. I'm thinking I'll certainly first round pick. It depends on how the year goes, but he'll be thereabouts. But you know, another solid dual threat, but just with a bit more experience.
Last one, I'm going to make you do the classic American thing of a bold prediction. 1 word answer. Drew Alla, boom or bust?
Boom. Big fan of Drew Alla. I think I look at the Ducks schedule and the whiteout game against Penn State I'm worried about. Okay. So I think they'll end up winning. I think I can see them winning the Big Ten and then making a decent run this year.
Nice.
We'll see. He'll probably play his first game and snap his ACL, and I'll look like an idiot. But
We hope not. We hope
we've all been there.
Cheers.
Just before we move on, I feel like I'm piggybacking again, going back to the conversation with Zach Hicks the other day about the Norris sellers, because I know you've talked glowingly about him, but all I kept hearing in the back of my mind there was just a few alarm bells that we've been down this road before. Sort of big, powerful, dual threat quarterback with not a lot of experience. When you just said there about Kay Kluber being similar but having that those extra years experience, I think that for me as a Colts fan would give me that extra layer of comfort if we were going to be going down the route of looking for quarterback next year. I mean, hopefully we don't need to, but that is something that we have to consider. I think that would probably, I don't know about you, Nathan or Harrison, but I think for me potentially I would probably be more comfortable going with, you look at the way Bo Nix came out of college after spending about 400 years there. You look at the way sort of Jaden Daniels, they had those extra years, didn't they? And I think it shows sort of when they come into the NFL. Richardson is very, very raw. So, and on that, do you think the Norris sellers will declare, or do you think he's likely to stay in college? That's the other thing.
It's a very good point, because given everything I've just said and what we've said before we start talking about players, why not stay for your senior year? Why not develop a bit further, in the SEC, with a good surrounding around you, put more tape out there, and maybe have a look next year. Do you really want to be in the draft with if Manning goes, you got Nussmeier there with Cade Klubnik, there's Drew Aller, there's a lot of talent there. It's talent at the moment. I don't think it's nailed on. So I think a lot of these players need a good year. But like I said, he's second. He's played one full season. Give yourself another year. So it's a very fair shout for Norris. It'll be on his mind, especially if the year's not going quite as he expected, or they have some setbacks.
Cool, brilliant. Should we move on to another positional group then?
Yeah. So stay on offense. Or do you want to jump to
we stay on offense. No, we can stay on offense. So we chatted before Adam came on the show. I gave him a list of sort of positional groups we'd be interested in, or we potentially be looking at. And the other one on offense that I said the Colts may have an interest in next summer, especially with Alec Pierce's contract, it being a contract year for him. I think we may have a vacancy potentially in the wide receiver room. And it's also an area that I think, it's always good to know what prospects are coming out wide receivers, playmakers. So, I'd be interested to see what sort of players you think may be an option, or what sort of players you've come up with in that area, or players we should look for.
Sure. So, again, just thinking about what we're talking about, an RPO style with the Colts. So, I'm thinking you need, guys that can catch in space, run those intermediate routes, create the separation you need for your quarterback to run, make some space and throw into a little bit of traffic. So I believe in this guy, but it's a bit boring because I think he is projected to be thereabouts top picks. Jordan Tyson for Arizona State. He's going into, I think it's his junior year next year. He played, he's done 2 years already. He was at Colorado and then shifted to Arizona State. Arizona State had a really good year last year. So it all came together, Cam Scatterboo. And so that whole setup, making the playoffs, was a great breakout year. What I liked about Jordan when I was looking at this is kind of continuing the play, right? So it's not just having the safe hands, making those catches, it's the yards after catch. So just keeping that play moving. He seems to have quite a good knack for separating and then getting on his bike and cracking on. From good stock as well. I've got a feeling his brother was in the NBA, maybe drafted a year or two ago. So the family, that pro sort of sports family, which is quite, is always useful. But I think he's trusted. I think Sam Levitt went to him quite a lot last year. There's no reason why that's not going to continue. So, wide receiver 1 in the Big 12. Against decent opposition, putting decent tape on. issue for Jordan is going to be, I think he was injured in 2023. So I'm guessing the doctors are going to be having a good look at that. Well, I think everyone will be having a good look at that and seeing how his knee, how that holds up. So that could be something to just keep an eye on for him. But, you know, what size? It was 6'1", 195 pounds. So a decent size for a wide receiver and quite a technical player too. So I think for him, it's not just sort of size going up 50-50s. It's more just creating some technical separation, lots of shuffles, getting away from that corner or that safety, and then, you know, he's off. So a good one to keep an eye on. Next one I was going to mention, maybe a bit more of a wild card, might be a bit later down, is Eugene Wilson III, son of Eugene Wilson II, who was, I can't remember who he played for now, was in the NFL. I think he might even have a Super Bowl ring actually, or two maybe. But this guy plays for Florida, the Gators in the SEC again, so very high profile. He missed most of last season with I want to say ACL, knee injury of some sort. So again, coming back, needs to prove himself, needs a big year. Can play, he can return as well as rush as well. So I think he might have been a two-way in high school. So a bit of versatility again. So, you know, when I'm doing the research on the Colts, versatility seems to come up a lot on both sides of the ball. It seems to be a key theme for what you need from all your players. So, you know, he could be a good one. You know, good hands, again, decent yards after catch. So just one I'm keeping an eye on, maybe just to see what happens there. Not a particularly high profile one, but one that may be worth a look. I don't know if you call that a sleeper. I suppose you probably do, really. But yeah, might be of interest.
So the position I'm most concerned about for the Colts, I think, is our weakest position, is linebacker. Bearing in mind, change of defensive coordinator this year, Lou Anarumo, change of system. Us three were used to a cover three. We literally, in our group chat, every defensive snap, it would be like, oh, it's cover three again. So there's going to be a change of system. We're excited, but surprisingly, the Colts didn't pick up a linebacker. Did we pick up a linebacker?
Very, very late.
No, we took Hunter Waller at safety, and I think there's talk of potentially him playing a few snaps or moving him forward a bit, but we didn't take an actual recognised linebacker in this year's draft. No.
So quite surprisingly, Waller didn't take a linebacker this draft. So who are we looking forward to next season?
Yeah, the main guy I think at the moment, and I think he would fit, is Anthony Hill Jr., who's playing for the Longhorns at Texas Longhorns in the SEC again. So he is, again, when I thought about your linebackers, really, again, a little bit of versatility, being able to drop back, but also the disruption. You know, your defense seems to be a lot about disruption. We're not so worried about containing. We want to get round. We want to cause problems. So for Anthony Hill, you know, he does have that athleticism. Get that word out. He's played a big part in the SEC already. You know, 2 seasons for Texas. I think we're on about 170 odd tackles, 100 of those solo. So, you know, he's productive. He's a leader in the defense already for the team. So character-wise, you know, he seems to have that. So plug in and play, perhaps. Should be top 10 if things carry on going the way they are. Probably the weak side, because I think he's quite of a 3. He's quite mobile. Maybe over time, because I think your middle linebacker, is it Zaire Franklin?
Yeah.
He's your guy, right? He's quite settled, but maybe learning under him and one day replace, you know, maybe as a replacement if needed. But he's got that side to side speed. So the weak side guy who's trying to hoover up is probably where he is. But yeah, I think really good. really good look for you, if possible.
Yeah.
Who else was I thinking about? CJ Allen at Georgia was the other guy. So Georgia, strong with a decent, again, SEC. So again, good caliber. Maybe more middle linebacker for the future. I think he's got that kind of leadership role at Georgia. Very strong, very powerful. He should be able to plug and play again, just given his size, given what he does, just go in and just destroy offensive lines, essentially. But, reads the game pretty well. So from what I understood, there's this very flexible, versatile defense. So, you want your middle linebacker to sort of shift things around where needed and to make those calls. He's got enough about him to potentially be able to do that. He's looking at about, what's the numbers, 50, 70 odd solo tackles in his career, all at Georgia, 130 odd total that he's been involved with. So, he likes to get amongst it, let's say. So yeah, maybe another good option, one that I'm keeping an eye on for you.
So Chris Ballard, when drafting, he very much likes to favour his RAS scores. It's a big thing when he drafted. If you go and look back for his draft, Anthony Richardson and others, it's big for him, right? He seems to be that numbers guy. Do you take any account? I mean, you've got to take some account of their athleticism, surely, but do you read as much into it? And with that in mind, out of the two linebackers, who would Chris Ballard likely pick?
Probably at this. I mean, I don't know their numbers. I would imagine, without looking, just thinking about the characters and where they are, probably Anthony Hill. It's probably the more productive of the two, and athletic of the two. But again, we're talking margins here. I think they're both top prospects. I think there may be both in the top 5, one way, shape, or form. So they both should be reasonably high up the board if they can stay healthy and be as productive as they have been.
And I mean, if the guy from George is a true bulldog, it's pointless us talking about him because Howie Roseman will just trade up and draft him. The Eagles fill their defense with bulldogs, and I'm sure it'll happen again. So you hear the year first, guys. You hear the year first. The Eagles are trading up.
That's so funny. As soon as you said CJ Allen and said Georgia, I thought Eagle. I literally just went Eagle straight away in my head. I was like, he's gone to Philly then. That's exactly what I thought, man. That's incredible. Yeah. It annoys me that we don't go shopping in the SEC enough because there seems to be a pretty good success rate at the moment, doesn't there? Sort of coming out of there and into the NFL. Brilliant.
Yeah, it's. I think it's still the best. It's where most of the first round comes from. I think. I remember seeing a table. I can't remember off it, but it is still a very fertile ground. And the Big Ten's catching up. I think they're obviously the power two. You're not really going to go wrong with drafting a player like the SEC normally.
No, definitely.
Excellent. So the next question from me is. It's a bit more wider picture, and then we can maybe get back into certain players. But I mean, quite vaguely, is the college system failing? We've seen Brady talk about it. We've talked about it a lot. I personally think there's a failure to protect these young adults going into a hyper competitive, hyper violent, hyper situation sort of sports where. We've seen all extremes, right? You see the school prefect Peyton Manning, and then you see. I'm trying to think of an example, but then you see an Eli Manning, someone who sits out and throws his toys out the pram. Still great players, but now it seems with like Anthony Richardson, who's struggling to get up to NFL level, who's told him to declare this early. Should be fired, should lose the agency license. And it seems to be getting I suppose what I'm trying to say, the gap between floor and ceiling in college seems to be getting so extreme and so wide. We saw with, I forget the young lads, Shador Sanders, that whole mess what his dad created, if you ask me, and his whole entourage created. Ridiculous. Is the college system failing? Is it the entourage is failing? How do we get around this?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. I mean, failing. Back to my earlier point, failing suggests a cooperation in a way which we know there isn't. But is college football no longer the best ground? Is the only ground, but is it no longer preparing these players adequately to move up? I think there's certainly a case you could make for that. I think some of the issue, this whole money debacle we've had over the last few years and uncertainty has not helped. And if you take a traditional view where a high school player commits to a university, he's part of the family for 4 years, he graduates there, he's part of the coach, knows the system, he gets fully developed, then he redshirts maybe 1 year, then he's a backup, then he's a starter, 2 years as a starter, then as a senior, NFL draft. That traditional pipeline has been fractured a little bit by the transfer portal, by the money. There is more moving around than there is. It's easier to move around because of the transfer portal, something we haven't spoken about. So yes, I think you're not getting that same development. Your character's not developing in the same way. You're not necessarily outside of a certain subset getting the leadership skills and opportunities that you perhaps would. I mean, we mentioned Nico Lamalavia. Obviously, he was somewhere else before Tennessee. Then now he's gone from Tennessee to UCLA. So that's going to be three years. Where are you building any sort of rapport, any sort of knowledge of one system? Now, natural talent means he may go and sling it around and be a reasonably high pick. But, how much of the intangibles, learning and development have been lost because of all of that moving around? So I think that's a fair challenge. What's the answer? I don't know. Maybe the system's settling down. Hopefully revenue share, regulating the NIL a little bit more brings a bit more stability. So it becomes a bit more level playing field. You don't have the need to move around. And I think one of the selling points, if everyone can pay the same, everyone can share revenue the same. Sorry, we're not paying. And NIL is a bit more regulated. Then where's the value for players? It's going to be in the development. It's going to be in going to a school that's really good for linebackers where I can really develop because they're renowned for it, or a school that's really good at quarterback that I know they've got good quarterback coaches. So players are going to have to start thinking about this a little bit different. If the field is we level the playing field in terms of money, because it has to be about development, which I think we may get to, but we're just a little while off yet. We're not quite there. But yeah, it's created instability that has not helped some of these young men going up to the NFL, certainly, which has an impact on NFL teams.
Before I let Ed jump in, breaking now from The Athletic, this might change a few people's mind. TJ Watt, anyone got any guesses? 3 years. Yeah, 3 years, 123 million.
Nice.
That's 41 million a year. Wow.
Good for him.
I'd take 1 million a year. I'm probably not a tenth of the player TJ Watt is, but I'd take 1 million. Congratulations to TJ Watt. And that will make Steelers fans very happy. Back to college football, Ed.
Yeah, no, I was just going to jump on that point. Sorry, just talking about there and talking about Nico. Can't say his last name, Via. Just picking on him. It's not specific to him, but just picking on him, using him as an example, because what's obviously happened this summer, he's not the first player to do it. He's not going to be the last player to go down this path, certainly with the way the game's going, I suppose, is when we get to draft time, we're going to start hearing that phrase we hear, isn't it? Great talent, all of this, character concerns, inverted commas. That's going to start putting sort of don't know why I just loaded balloons that I was past the screen there.
The computer agreed. Streaming yard agreed with you.
I don't know what happened. I don't know if I'm
That was
really
perfect
excited
timing.
about the point I'm making. I'm so excited about the point I'm making. I lit off a load of balloons. This is live. This is live, guys. This is fantastic. But yeah, I suppose fairly or unfairly, gonna let off some more balloons in a minute. Fairly or unfairly, these young men are going to be branded as character concerns, which might not be a true reflection of who they actually are. And then that's going to affect their draft stock. We see it year in, year out, don't we? Certain players, brilliant player, but character concerns, and yeah, it costs them money.
It does. It costs them money, draft position, and I think players are going to have to think about that a bit more. And I think we've lurched too far the wrong way. We had players who sit out on the combine, don't want to do the interviews.
Yeah.
What may or may not really happen with Shador Sanders and the Giants when he turned up for that interview.
Yeah.
Things like that do not help these players. So I think there needs a reset. I think players need to think about what they really want and what they're doing here. And maybe with money now settled, they can think more about the football side of thing. And I think you're right. You mentioned the word agents there and advisors, and that's a bit of a murky ground still. It's being a bit more regulated. But they need to get hold, I think, of these agents and advisors. And, we mentioned like with UEFA, you've got to do a course, or the FA, you've got to do a course to be a registered agent. They need to start thinking about regulation in that way, even if it's token. We need a bit of a better system, because you're right. There's agents out there that must be failing some of these young men.
Before we move on from this, I promise this is the last point on it. But do you see a way how the current NIL system and transfer portal system strengthens the current players in the sense that it wheels out the mentally weak's probably not a fair term to use, because there's a lot going on the big time in the lives. God, when I was 21, all I wanted to do was drink. But do you think it could be a case of NFL executive coaches, GMs looking at it and thinking, oh, well, he didn't want to be quarterback for and work his way up. He just kept moving around. It wheedle out the weak mentality sort of vibe. Do you see any of that?
Yeah, I mean, there could be a signaling impact for that, where someone moves around because they don't like the situation. You could flip that and say, well, your time in college is so finite that you do need to put tape down. So I kind of get it in a way. You need to find a spot where you can play and put some tape down, as long as you're moving for that and not for just for money. But I do have hope that with revenue share, where it's very formulaic what people are getting, and that sets a bit of a baseline, supplemented by hopefully a bit more of a regulated NIL when we get there, that you can almost, we eventually get to a point where money is not the main thing and it becomes more about the development, and hopefully we get some stability there. And then everyone can just look at the athletic output. And we can get to a point where it's more about that. But we're still in that transition period. I think that transition started in 2021, and it will roll through, for a number of years yet, while a lot of these lawsuits settle. But we seem to be trending in the right direction.
Cool. Nathan,
I have a quick one, Ed, if you don't mind.
No, go for it, man.
I think I made a note of this whilst you guys were talking about nil, and I kind of, it's probably the writer in me. I called it the sportsman's dream. You put 1,000 and 20,000 more hours into developing to make your dream come true of getting to the NFL. When does getting there become worse than getting X amount of money? Because that's what I'm seeing more of. Shamar Stewart's the primary, and I know there's more depth to it, right? I know he didn't want to be the first of his kind. I think he spoke eloquently about it and how veteran players had approached him to say, do not sign this deal. You'll be number one, and God help everybody thereafter. But I think the core belief that I'm seeing, I was reading only 6 second-round picks have signed their deal. People are actively holding out. And I've probably circled away from my question, but, when does X amount of money become better than I've made it?
You're right. It's a very fair point, because you're right. The dream used to be enough, right? Getting the 41 million contract or playing in the NFL, it was always the dream, and that's where the base of these players wanted to get to. But now we're in a scenario where you start making 1 million, 2 million, whatever it is, and that's quite nice. And do you really want to go through that hardship? Now 1 or 2 million a year can only last for 4 years, because that's your college eligibility. But you start thinking about things almost in reverse. It's no longer about that dream, and it's more about the money. But who am I to say that, like you say, these players get smacked around, their careers can end in one play. They put their body on a line, maybe they deserve it as well. But yeah, I think we're missing a little bit of the romance and of the game, and that sort of idea of the dream a little bit. I'm sure it's still there. We just don't hear about it because we're too busy talking about money.
Good point.
We're talking about it's the few spoiling it for the many, in a way, I guess. There's still loads of players that get their head down, fulfill their dream, and then we get the noisy ones that come along with the ride.
Yeah, excellent. So, like I say, we've been going nearly an hour now. Adam, just want to thank you for your time. It means a lot that you've come on and done this. I've certainly learnt a lot, and there was stuff I didn't know, as you can tell, about college football. So it's been great for me. The sort of last question I got is draft sleepers and draft fallers. Like we say, when somebody does a mock draft for 2025, there's one out for 2026 the next day. We love doing millions of mock drafts because it's content, it's clicks, and if I put out 1 million mock drafts, one of them is going to be 10% right, and I can say to the whole world I was right when I said Andrew Luck would go number 1 overall. It's a bit ridiculous, but for next year's for the draft class coming up this year, is there any major sleepers and major fallers you've got your eye on?
We've talked about a lot of players, and when you, like you say, with these things, a stop clock's always right twice a day. So you throw names out there, one of them will land. What do I have? I mean, quarterback wise, the other quarterback, I guess you can call him a sleeper, is I'm just thinking about John Mateer. He was at Washington State and he's moved to Oklahoma. So he's now going to be on the bigger stage. He had a great time at Washington State, but against lesser opponents. So I'm really interested to see if he can bring those skills to the SEC, what that can do for him. So I'm really thinking of him as sink or swim. He'll either get there and it just won't work. He's not that big either. I think he's 6'1", so he's throwing over, trying to get it over defenders is going to be a bit of a challenge for him. But, if he can pull it all together, that might be quite a nice little sleeper. So one to keep an eye on. Who else is there? And he's probably the key one. Just being a Ducks fan, what's the name of the defensive? Ed's going to test me now because I'm going to get this wrong. Matteo Udegaard. Let me try that again. You know the one I mean.
That's how I say it, yeah.
I think the Ducks have got we've got a lot of new players we've brought in. We need to see if we can make that gel, certainly in a very competitive Big Ten. So if we can get him going at the edge position, I think we could have quite a decent player that could leave his mark. So yeah,
Nice.
keeping an eye on him as well. So yeah, they're probably the key ones I'm probably thinking about at the moment.
Nice.
Fallers, yeah, I mean, we've talked about a couple of players that are carrying injuries. I think they could probably consider fallers as well. But it's still early. These guys have got to step on the field for week 0, week 1. I think we'll start getting a better clue of what's going on with them when it starts becoming real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ed, Nathan, do you have any more questions before we round out?
I'll drop a quick fire one, if that's all right. Because I can't believe we haven't spoken about this guy. We're Colts fans, and we haven't talked about a guy with a similar surname coming in, a certain safety from Ohio State, Caleb Downs. Is he as, I think he's one of the players that we'll hear the most about. Thumbs up, apparently, the computer agrees. I think he's going to be one of the players we're going to hear the most about this year. Maybe the Travis Hunter of this draft.
Yeah.
I've got him going top 5. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't talk backs in the end, but yeah, I think the defensive back class, he stands out as being right up there. Decent stats, decent fundamentals. He is now, he's going into his 3rd year, and you look at the tackles he's put in already, and we're talking about 130, 40 odd of solo tackles. So yeah, I think he's a solid player. He's going to be right up there. Certainly one of the first backs off the board, all things being equal and everything going well. The Buckeyes are going to be thereabouts again, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great from a putting film on tape perspective. We're going to have Ducks, Buckeyes, Penn State, hopefully Michigan up there. It's going to be 3 or 4 way. But you're right in the window playing for Buckeyes football, right? And with his skills and talent, I think he's set up well to go early.
And Harrison, calm yourself, right? Because he is Josh Downs' brother. So if the Colts if we get Caleb, just calm, right? Be calm.
We'll have first and second downs. Ed, did you have a question?
Yeah, just one final one before we finish. Obviously, you've given some great names today, which I'm definitely I've put them down, and we'll keep an eye on them during the year, just see how they progress, and it'll be interesting to maybe sort of revisit this towards the end of the college season. See, maybe coming around to draft if any of these names are going to declare sort of what the hype is around them. Appreciate your time and taking the time to go through that with us. Just as a final question, who's your very early prediction to win the national championship college this season? Who would you say? It's far too early to be calling out names in the same way if I asked you for a Super Bowl name, it's too early. But who would you say right now on the 17th of July? Where would you be thinking?
Okay, so I'll try and I know you asked for a quick answer, so I won't ramble. There's a number of teams that are going to be thereabouts. I think Arch Manning is going to bring something special at Texas. I feel the stars are aligned enough with everything else that the Longhorns have got, that this could be, he could be the one that drives them to some success. The way that the 12-team playoff works and the way they're going to do the rankings this year, where it's going to be top 12, you're going to have some monster teams in there. So, we're still going to have our Georgias. We're going to have a lot of the players we've talked about today are going to be in these playoffs. So you can have your Georgias, you can have your Clemsons there. Arizona State should be there for the Big 12. Ducks should be thereabouts. Penn State will be there. So it's going to be, I think I'm really looking forward to this season. It's going to be a lot of teams fighting out, but I just feel that the Manning effect feels real, seems real, and he should drive them to that natty.
Nice.
Okay,
very early prediction.
Yeah, like I say, Adam, again, thanks for your time. 2 quick ones from me, and I promise that's it. I'll let you go and live your life, and I'll unlock the basement door and you can escape. Two quick ones from me. I think I really struggled to concept to get the difference in level, right? And I joke about this all the time. I think I put in our WhatsApp group, Trey Sermon, our third choice running back, looked slow. Bearing in mind my 40-yard time is probably about 25 seconds. You just talked about Arch Manning there taking Texas. Is Texas, isn't it?
Yeah.
To the promised land. Correct me at any point, but Quinn Ewers was their quarterback last year.
It was, yeah.
So how is the jumping talent? How big of jumping talent is Quinn Ewers good and Manning, obviously namesake, is he elite, or is it just pieces are coming together?
But it's I would put it, maybe let's call it 2/3 him, and then it helps that I think everyone else is a little bit, the team's still mature, it's still a good setup. I think Steve Sarkisian is due and needs to make that work. So I just think there's enough buzz about Arch that I think it's real. Good family, good stock, but it's not just the name. It seems to have all been done in the right way. Like last year, he sat behind Quinn. He came on for role-specific plays, did his bit, learned the system, and now it's his time. It's his turn. So he's done it that everything we just spoke about earlier on about doing things the classic way. He's gone and done that. He's got a lot of support behind him. Great family to come from. So I think he is just that special. And Quinn was a great quarterback as well. And they weren't that far away really when you think about it, in terms of to making the final game. But maybe I think Manning will just have enough to just take them that step further.
Yeah, and the last one. So, college football. I watch the highlights on YouTube the next day when it's a big game. I play the NCAA game. I've not found a team to settle on. Right, I used to think it was Ohio State, but then it just turned out it was Malik Hooker I liked, and I didn't really like Ohio State. I thought it might be Indiana, try and do that thing. Indiana Colts, Indiana Pacers, Indiana Hoosiers. I'm not really in love with it. So I want you to sell Oregon to me now. And let's see if the Ducks in the match. I want you to end this podcast by selling Oregon to anyone watching who hasn't got a college team.
Okay. Well, obviously the Duck sells himself because he's just so lovable. But aside from the Duck, you've got a team that has been thereabouts for a little while. Got a great setup, great community in UG. It's ripe, it's ready for success, but it hasn't quite. It's a team yearning. We won the Big Ten as we moved from Pac-12 to Big Ten. It's ready. It's just waiting. It just needs that final push. So it just needs as much international support as it can to join the probably 70,000 at Outson behind, just to get it over the line. But for me, it's a lot of the traditions, and it's a lot of the little bits in between that make college football. And I think with the Ducks, if you're not really into the game yet, or college football you find a bit boring, I just find there's enough hooks with other things going on around it to maybe just draw you in and help with a bit of an identity. They kind of say you don't choose your team, it kind of chooses you. For various reasons, because of a lot of the intangibles, the Ducks chose me, which is kind of inconvenient being a West Coast team because it makes for some late nights during the weekend. That can't be helped. But yeah, I'm just a big fan of the Ducks, and it's one of the loudest stadiums as well. Nice. One of the loudest places to play for. I'd say for anyone that doesn't know the college game, just YouTube something like best college football entrances or best college football grounds, and you see some of these mega stadiums, 70, 80, 90, 100,000, 110,000 in the case of Michigan, you've got 110,000 college kids screaming, shouting, singing, bouncing up and down. They're just amazing atmospheres. It's hard not to fall in love with it when you watch some of these things.
Yeah, excellent. Again, thanks for your time. We've
Welcome,
been Southbound.
anytime.
Adam has kindly joined us, so please go and check out his socials and his writing. I'll get this right now. College Football UK View. That's the one, isn't it?
Yeah, is the blog, and CFB UK View on Twitter. So I'll tend to do smaller posts on there, and then some of the bigger stuff on the blog. But we'll kick back into the blog, talk about some football now that we're getting closer to the season.
Excellent. And like I say, we've been Southbound. Adam's been our excellent guest, and join us next week when Ed and Nathan will be taking a tour on the road around the NFC divisions, I believe, right, boys?
Yes, that's our plan for next week. Yeah.
And telling them why they all suck and the Colts are going 17. And Adam, I'm sure we'll have you back on the podcast after the Ducks go undefeated and win the national championship. See you all later.
Be open. Thanks, boys.
Peace.
Cheers.